My stepson was preparing my obituary while I was still breathing. He'd been poisoning my medication for months, hoping I'd die before I could change my will. What he didn't know was that I'd switched to placebos weeks ago. When I walked into that family meeting perfectly healthy, the look on his face told me everything I needed to know. Before I tell you how a simple pill bottle and a suspicious pharmacist saved my life and exposed him as a murderer, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And please hit like and subscribe if you believe that a father's love can overcome even the darkest betrayal. The November rain drummed a steady rhythm against the windows of Morrison's Pharmacy, the small independent drugstore I'd owned for 42 years. I stood behind the counter, my arthritic fingers carefully counting out Mrs. Henderson's blood pressure medication, when the phone call came that shattered my world. The hospice nurse's voice was gentle but firm. "Mr. Morrison, your wife Helen passed away peacefully about 20 minutes ago. I'm so sorry for your loss." The pill bottle slipped from my hand, scattering white tablets across the worn linoleum floor. The woman who had stood beside me through pharmacy school, through the lean years when we were building the business, through every triumph and tragedy. She'd been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 6 months ago. We knew it was coming, but knowing didn't make the emptiness any less crushing. I closed the pharmacy early that day, something I'd only done a handful of times in 4 decades. The drive to the hospice facility was a blur. When I arrived, Helen's body had already been taken away. All that remained was the empty hospital bed and the faint scent of lavender from the lotion we'd used on her hands. I sat in that empty room for 3 hours, unable to move, unable to think, unable to do anything but exist in the hollow silence she'd left behind. The funeral was held on a gray Thursday afternoon. The chapel was packed with people from our small Virginia town, customers who'd filled their prescriptions at Morrison's for decades, church members, old friends. My daughter Emily flew in from Seattle. We hadn't spoken much in the past 5 years, not since her messy divorce. I'd sided with her ex-husband on a financial matter, and she'd taken it as a betrayal. Looking at her across Helen's casket, I saw how much we'd both aged, how much time we'd wasted on stubborn pride. But the person who drew the most attention at the funeral wasn't Emily. It was Marcus. My stepson, Helen's child from her first marriage, swept into the chapel like he owned it. At 35, Marcus was everything I'd never been. Tall, handsome, charismatic, dressed in an expensive tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, making 6 figures a year, and he never let anyone forget it. Marcus positioned himself at the center of every conversation, his arm around my shoulders, playing the role of the devoted son. But I'd known Marcus for 20 years, since Helen and I married when he was 15. I knew the difference between genuine emotion and performance. As he dabbed at his perfectly dry eyes with a silk handkerchief, accepting condolences from mourners, I caught him checking his phone, the screen reflected in his designer sunglasses. He was looking at real estate listings, luxury condos in Miami, properties starting at $1.2 million. My mother just died, and he was shopping for beachfront property. A cold knot formed in my stomach, but I pushed it down. People grieve in different ways, I told myself. Don't judge. After the funeral, Emily approached me. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. "Dad," she said quietly, "I'm flying back to Seattle tomorrow. If you need anything." Her voice trailed off. We both knew the offer was hollow, a formality. The distance between us was more than just geographic. Marcus, however, had a different plan. That evening, as I sat in my empty house surrounded by 43 years of memories, he showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and a concerned expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Robert," he said, using my first name as he always did, never calling me Dad or even Bob like everyone else. "I've been thinking. You shouldn't be alone right now. I'm going to stay here for a while. Just until you get back on your feet." His tone was kind, but it wasn't a request. It was a declaration. "Marcus, I appreciate it, but I'm fine. I've been taking care of myself for 67 years. He put his hand on my shoulder, that practiced gesture of filial concern. "Please, Mom would have wanted this, for the two of us to take care of each other. What could I say to that? I stepped aside and let him in. The first few weeks were almost pleasant. Marcus cooked meals, kept the house clean, drove me to and from the pharmacy. He seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being. But slowly, subtly, things began to change. He started asking questions about the pharmacy's finances, about my retirement plans, about my will. Always casual, always wrapped in the language of helping me organize my affairs. One evening, about a month after Helen's death, we were sitting in the living room. I was reviewing the pharmacy's quarterly reports, and Marcus was on his laptop. "Robert," he said, looking up with that earnest expression he'd perfected, "have you thought about what you're going to do with the pharmacy? You're not getting any younger. Running a business at your age, it's a lot of stress." "I've managed fine for 42 years, I replied, not looking up from my papers. "But things are different now. Without Mom here to help." He leaned forward. "I've been doing some research. A CVS just opened 2 miles away. They're going to undercut your prices. Independent pharmacies are dying, Robert. The smart move would be to sell while you still can." My head snapped up. "Sell Morrison's? The pharmacy Helen and I built together? I'm just thinking about your future," he said smoothly. "Your health. You deserve to enjoy your retirement. Travel. Relax. And the building alone is worth at least $800,000, maybe $1 million if we find the right buyer." He'd said we, as if the pharmacy was already partly his, as if my life's work was a commodity to be liquidated. The seed of suspicion that had been planted at the funeral began to sprout. "I'm not selling," I said firmly. "Morrison's will stay Morrison's until the day I die." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Something cold and calculating. It was gone in an instant, replaced by his trademark smile. "Of course, Robert. I understand. Just wanted you to know you have options." But the conversation didn't end there. Over the next few weeks, Marcus brought it up again and again. Different angles, different approaches. "Have you thought about Emily? Wouldn't she want her inheritance now instead of waiting years? Don't you want to see the world while you still can? The building needs expensive repairs. It might be better to sell before it becomes a money pit." Then, about 2 months after Marcus moved in, I started feeling sick. It began with occasional dizziness, a persistent fatigue I couldn't shake. I'd been a pharmacist for over 4 decades. I knew my own body. This wasn't normal aging. This was something else. One morning, I nearly fainted while filling a prescription. My hands shook so badly I had to steady myself against the counter. Marcus, who'd started coming to the pharmacy every day, supposedly to help, rushed over. "Robert, you look terrible. You need to see a doctor." "I'm fine," I insisted, though I clearly wasn't. Just didn't sleep well. He drove me home early that day. On the way, he brought up the pharmacy again. "See? This is exactly what I've been talking about. You can't keep doing this. What if you'd passed out? What if you'd made a mistake with someone's medication? You could lose everything in a lawsuit." That night, lying in bed, my heart racing for no apparent reason, I thought about what he'd said. He was right about one thing. I had been making mistakes. Small ones, but mistakes nonetheless. Miscounting pills, forgetting to call in refill authorizations. It terrified me. Maybe come $7. Maybe come $7. Maybe come $7. 18. Graham. Maybe come $7. And maybe come $7. In 42 years, I'd prided myself on never, ever making an error that could harm a patient. I went to my doctor, Dr. Patricia Chen, who'd been my physician for 20 years. She ran every test imaginable: blood work, EKG, CT scan, cognitive assessments. Everything came back normal. "You're in remarkably good shape for 67, Robert," she said. "Some anxiety and insomnia, probably related to grief. I'm prescribing you something to help you sleep and something for the anxiety. Take them as directed." I filled the prescriptions at my own pharmacy, something I'd done hundreds of times. But this time, When I got home, Marcus was waiting. He took the pill bottles from me with a concerned smile. "Let me help you organize these. We don't want you getting confused about doses." He set up a daily pill organizer, filling each compartment meticulously. "See? Now, you don't have to think about it. Just take what's in each day's slot." It seemed thoughtful, caring. But the suspicious part of my mind, the part that had been growing louder, whispered a warning I chose to ignore. At first, the medications seemed to help. I slept better, but the other symptoms got worse. The dizziness intensified. My hands trembled constantly. I lost weight. My thinking became foggy, confused. I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there. Customers' names, people I'd known for decades, suddenly escaped me. Marcus's concern grew more pronounced, more public. He started coming into the pharmacy during busy hours, making a show of helping me, catching me when I stumbled, gently correcting my mistakes in front of customers. "Poor Robert," I'd hear him say to Mrs. Henderson or Mr. Chen. "He's not been himself since Mom passed. I'm worried about him." The customers, my neighbors, people who'd trusted me for decades, started looking at me differently. With pity, with concern, with doubt. "Is Morrison okay to be filling prescriptions?" I heard someone whisper. "Maybe it's time for him to retire." One particularly bad day, I misread a prescription and nearly gave a customer 10 times the correct dosage. Marcus caught it just in time. His heroic save witnessed by a pharmacy full of people. After they left, he sat me down in my office. "Robert, this can't continue. You're going to kill someone." His voice was gentle, but his eyes were hard. "I think it's time we had a serious conversation about your future, about selling the pharmacy, about getting you the care you need." Care. The word sent a chill down my spine. "What kind of care?" "There are wonderful assisted living facilities," he said. "Places where you'd be safe, where professionals could monitor your medications, your health. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." Assisted living. He wanted to put me in a nursing home. He wanted to declare me incompetent and ship me off somewhere while he sold my pharmacy and pocketed the money. The fog in my brain cleared for just a moment, and in that clarity, I saw the truth. This wasn't grief. This wasn't aging. This was something else. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the pill organizer on my nightstand. Marcus had filled it that morning. 7 compartments, each with 3 pills. 1 white sleeping pill, 1 blue anxiety medication, 1 small orange pill I didn't recognize. I picked up the orange pill, holding it under my reading lamp. My heart stopped. I'd been a pharmacist for 42 years. I knew pills the way a jeweler knows gemstones. This wasn't one of the medications Dr. Chen had prescribed. This was digoxin, a heart medication, a medication I'd never been prescribed, a medication that, in the wrong dose, or given to someone who didn't need it, could cause every single symptom I'd been experiencing: confusion, tremors, weakness, dizziness, vision problems. Marcus was poisoning me. My stepson, the man I'd helped raise, the man I'd paid for college, the man who'd lived in my house rent-free for 2 months, was slowly killing me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every thought, every memory, every interaction with Marcus over the past 2 months replayed in my mind with a new, sinister context. His insistence on organizing my medications, his eagerness to sell the pharmacy, his public displays of concern that made me look incompetent, his convenient presence whenever I had an episode. He'd been systematically destroying my reputation, my health, my life, and he'd been doing it with a smile. The question that haunted me through that long, dark night was why? Why would he do this? I'd always treated Marcus well. I'd never been wealthy, but I'd supported Helen's decision to pay for his expensive private college. I'd given him a job at the pharmacy during summers. What had I done to deserve this? Then I remembered the will. Helen and I had made our wills together 5 years ago. Everything was split between Emily and Marcus. The house, the savings, the pharmacy, all divided equally. But there was a clause: if I remarried or if either child was found to be acting against my interests, that child's share would be reduced or eliminated. It was a standard provision, something our lawyer had recommended. Marcus knew about that will, and he knew something else. He knew that Emily and I were estranged. Barely speaking, if something happened to me, if I died while we were still distant, Marcus would inherit everything. The house worth $400,000, my savings of $200,000, and the pharmacy, the building, and business, worth easily $1 million. He'd be set for life. All he had to do was wait for me to die, or help me along. But the poisoning wasn't just about the money. It was about control. By making me appear incompetent, by destroying my reputation, he could have me declared unable to manage my own affairs. He could get power of attorney. He could sell the pharmacy while I was still alive, before Emily or anyone else could question it. It was brilliant in its cruelty. At 6 a.m., I got out of bed. I dressed carefully, putting on my best suit, the one I'd worn to Helen's funeral. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked sick. I looked old. I looked like exactly what Marcus wanted me to be, a confused, dying old man. But behind the facade, my mind was clear, clearer than it had been in weeks. I knew what I had to do. I went downstairs. Marcus was already up, making breakfast, playing the devoted son. "Morning. Robert, how are you feeling?" "I made oatmeal. Just the way you like it." "I'm feeling much better, actually." I lied, sitting down at the kitchen table. Marcus set a bowl in front of me, along with my morning pills from the organizer. I picked up the pills, pretending to swallow them with orange juice, but I palmed them instead. Marcus watched me carefully. "That's good to hear. We have that appointment with the real estate agent this afternoon, remember? Just to get an appraisal on the pharmacy building. No commitment. I didn't remember any such appointment because I'd never agreed to one. But I nodded. Of course. This afternoon, my mind was racing. I needed proof. I needed evidence. And I needed help. There was only one person I could trust, Zara Chen. She'd worked at Morrison's for 15 years before leaving to take a position at the hospital pharmacy. She was sharp, observant, and most importantly, she'd known me long enough to know that what was happening to me wasn't natural aging. I told Marcus I was going to the pharmacy early to do inventory. He offered to drive me, but I insisted on driving myself. "I need to feel useful," I said, playing into his narrative of the confused old man trying to maintain independence. The moment I got to Morrison's, I called Sarah. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Morrison? Is everything okay?" "It's 7 a.m. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Sarah, I need your help. Can you meet me at the pharmacy right now? It's urgent." She heard something in my voice. 20 minutes later, she walked through the door. I locked it behind her. For the next hour, I told her everything. The symptoms, the pills, my suspicions about Marcus. She listened, without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, she held out her hand. "Do you have the pills? The ones he's been giving you?" I pulled the orange pill from my pocket. She examined it under the pharmacy's pill identification. "Light decoction," she confirmed. 0.25 milligrams. "Robert, this could kill you if you keep taking it. Your heart doesn't need this medication. It's essentially poisoning your cardiac system." "Can you test them?" I asked. "The pills from my organizer at home. Can you verify what they are?" She nodded. "I can run them through the hospital lab. But Robert, if what you're saying is true, you need to go to the police." "Not yet," I said. "I need proof that will hold up. I need to catch him in the act. I need to know why. And I need to find out if he's done this before." Sarah's eyes widened. "You think he's poisoned someone else?" I thought about Helen, her rapid decline, the cancer diagnosis that came out of nowhere, 6 months from diagnosis to death. The doctors said it was aggressive, But what if it wasn't cancer at all? What if Marcus had been poisoning her too? My wife, I said quietly. I need to know if Marcus killed my wife. Sarah's face went pale, but she didn't dismiss it. Let me make some calls. I have a friend who's a toxicologist. If there's anything unusual in your system, we'll find it. And Robert, she pulled out her phone. I'm documenting everything. Every pill, every symptom, every conversation. Over the next week, I continued my performance. I pretended to take the poisoned pills Marcus prepared, but I'd palm them and flush them later. Without the digoxin in my system, my symptoms began to improve. The fog lifted. The tremors decreased. I stopped losing weight. But I had to be careful not to improve too quickly. Marcus was watching me, like a hawk. Sarah, working quietly in the background, was building our case. She'd taken the pills to her toxicologist friend, who confirmed they were indeed digoxin. She'd also managed to get access to Helen's medical records. What she found was chilling. Helen's symptoms before her cancer diagnosis, the ones the doctors attributed to cancer, were consistent with chronic digoxin poisoning. Nausea, confusion, vision problems, all of it could have been caused by the same thing Marcus was doing to me. But the most damning evidence came from Sarah's digging into Marcus's past. She discovered that his biological father, Helen's first husband, had died 20 years ago. The official cause of death was a heart attack. He'd been 45 years old, seemingly healthy. Marcus had been 15. He'd inherited a substantial life insurance policy, money that had paid for his expensive education. Sarah pulled the death certificate. She contacted the doctor who'd signed it. The doctor, now retired, remembered the case. It was unusual, he told Sarah, over the phone. The man had no history of heart disease. The autopsy showed an enlarged heart, which we attributed to an undiagnosed condition. But looking back, especially with what you're telling me, the symptoms matched digoxin toxicity. If someone had been giving him cardiac medication he didn't need, over time, it could cause exactly what we saw. Marcus had done this before. Not once, but twice. He'd killed his own father. He'd killed my wife. And now he was trying to kill me. The realization was a physical blow. This wasn't about inheritance. This was pathology. Marcus was a serial killer who used poison as his weapon and family members as his victims. I wanted to go to the police immediately. But Sarah convinced me to wait. We need him to incriminate himself, she said. We need him on record, admitting what he's doing. Otherwise, a smart lawyer will tear apart circumstantial evidence. We need a confession. So we set a trap. I told Marcus I was ready to sell the pharmacy. I told him I wanted to update my will. Under 12, I told him I trusted him to help me organize everything. I told him exactly what he wanted to hear. And then I wired the house. Sarah's husband worked in home security. He installed cameras in the kitchen, in my bedroom, in my office. Tiny, invisible devices that would record everything. We were going to catch Marcus in the act. 3 days later, Marcus took the bait. Robert, he said over breakfast, I think it's time we had a family meeting. You, me, and Emily. We should all be on the same page about your estate, your health, your future. He'd reached out to Emily without telling me. He'd told her I was deteriorating, that I needed family support, that decisions needed to be made. She'd agreed to fly in that weekend. Marcus was setting up the final stage of his plan. He was going to use the family meeting to have me declared incompetent. With Emily's reluctant agreement, he could get guardianship over me, control of my assets, everything, but I had a different plan. The night before Emily arrived, I stopped pretending to take the pills entirely. I poured them down the sink. I wanted to be sharp, clear-headed, ready. Marcus noticed the improvement. Robert, you're looking better today, he said suspiciously. Have you been taking your medications? Every day, I lied, just like you prepared them. He studied me for a long moment, and I saw calculation in his eyes. That evening, He prepared my pills personally, making a show of it in the kitchen. Here, let me make sure you take these tonight. You don't want to have an episode tomorrow with Emily here. I took them from his hand, pretended to swallow them with water, and felt them burn against my palm as I palmed them. That night, I didn't sleep. I was too wired, too angry, too ready for what was coming. At 10 a.m. the next morning, Emily arrived. She looked uncomfortable, unsure. Marcus greeted her at the door with a hug and a somber expression. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know it's been hard between you and your dad, but he needs family right now." She glanced at me, sitting in the living room. I deliberately made myself look disheveled, playing the role one last time. "Oh, Dad," she said softly, and I heard genuine concern in her voice. Financial documents, medical records, information about assisted living facilities. He laid it all out systematically, painting a picture of a man who could no longer care for himself. "As you can see," he said to Emily, "your father's cognitive decline has been significant. He's made dangerous mistakes at the pharmacy. He's confused. I've been managing his medications, but I think he needs professional care." Emily looked at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "Dad, is this true? Are you okay?" This was the moment. This was when I was supposed to break down, to confirm Marcus's narrative, to let him win. Instead, I stood up. My hands were steady. My voice was clear. "I'm fine, Emily. Better than I've been in months, actually. I have been sick," I confirmed, "because Marcus has been poisoning me." The room went silent. Emily's mouth fell open. Marcus's face went through a series of rapid changes. Shock, confusion, and then, for just a fraction of a second, cold rage before the mask of concern slid back into place. "Robert, that's a very serious accusation. I think the confusion is worse than I thought. Emily, this is exactly what I've been talking about. Paranoid delusions, false accusations." I pulled the pill bottle from my pocket. "This is Digixin, a heart medication I've never been prescribed. You've been adding it to my daily pills for weeks, maybe months. It's caused every symptom I've been experiencing. The cameras in this house have recorded you preparing them. Everything is documented." Marcus's face went white. "You're insane," he whispered. "I've been trying to help you. Like you helped your father 20 years ago? Like you helped my wife?" I took a step toward him, and he backed away. "I know what you are, Marcus. I know what you've done. And so do the police." On cue, there was a knock at the door. I'd called Detective James Warren that morning, told him everything, sent him copies of the evidence Sarah and I had compiled. He'd been waiting for my signal. I opened the door. Detective Warren stood there with 2 uniformed officers. "Marcus Peterson," the detective said, stepping into the living room. "You're under arrest for attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." Marcus didn't run. He didn't resist. He just stood there, the mask finally dropping completely. What was left was something cold, empty, reptilian. "You should have just died quietly," he said to me, his voice flat. "It would have been easier for everyone." Emily gasped, backing away from him. "Oh my God. Oh my God. Marcus." The officers cuffed him. As they let him out, he looked back at me one last time. "All that work for nothing," he said. "All those years of pretending to care about you, about Mom. Such a waste. The pharmacy," I said quietly, "was never going to be yours. Even if I died, the will had protections. You would have gotten nothing." He smiled then. A terrible, empty smile. "I know, but watching you suffer was payment enough." The officers took him away. Emily sank onto the couch, sobbing. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have been here. I should have known." I sat beside her, putting my arm around her for the first time in 5 years. "You're here now. That's what matters." Over the next few weeks, the full extent of Marcus's crimes came to light. The police exhumed Helen's body, The toxicology report showed massive amounts of digoxin in her tissues. She'd been poisoned over a period of months. The symptoms had been mistaken for cancer. The real cancer diagnosis had been a tragic coincidence that had hidden the murder. They also exhumed Marcus's biological father. Same result. Digoxin poisoning, masked as heart disease. Marcus had killed 3 people. Over 20 years. He'd used the inheritance money from each murder to fund his lifestyle. He'd gotten away with it because digoxin was a legitimate medication. Pharmacies carried it. It was easy to access. And in small doses over time, it mimicked natural illness. The DA charged him with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. His lawyer tried to make a deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. The cameras, the pills, Sarah's testimony, the toxicology reports, the exhumed bodies. 3 months later, Marcus was convicted on all counts. The judge gave him life without parole. I was in the courtroom when they read the verdict. Marcus didn't react. He just sat there, emotionless, staring straight ahead. As they led him away, he didn't look at me. I realized then that I'd never really known him. The boy Helen had raised, the young man I'd helped through college, had always been a mask. What lay beneath was something I couldn't comprehend. Evil in its purest form. After the trial, Emily and I began to rebuild our relationship. She moved back to Virginia, taking a job at a design firm in Richmond. We had dinner every Sunday. We talked about Helen, about the years we'd lost, about the future. One evening, she brought up the pharmacy. "Dad, what are you going to do with Morrison's?" I thought about it for a long time. The pharmacy had been my life's work, but it was also the site of my near death. A reminder of Marcus's betrayal. "And I'm 67 years old," I said. "Maybe it is time to slow down, but not to sell, to transform." "What do you mean?" "I hired Sarah back," I explained. "Made her a partner. We're converting half the pharmacy into a health education center. We're going to teach people about medication safety, about recognizing elder abuse, about the warning signs of poisoning. We're going to make sure what happened to me and Helen doesn't happen to anyone else." Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. Mom would have loved that. 6 months after Marcus's conviction, we held the grand opening of the Morrison Pharmacy and Community Health Center. The whole town came out. Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Chen, Dr. Patricia Chen, Detective Warren, and dozens of others. Sarah gave a speech about medication safety. Emily talked about her mother's legacy. When it was my turn to speak, I stood at the podium and looked out at the faces of my community. People I'd served for over 4 decades. I'd come so close to losing everything. My health, my business, my life. But standing there, surrounded by people who cared, I realized I'd gained something too. Clarity about what really mattered. Not money, or property, or legacy. Connection, trust, love. The things Marcus had never understood and never would. "My stepson tried to destroy me," I said. "He tried to take everything I'd built, everything I valued. But he failed. Not because I was stronger or smarter, but because I wasn't alone. Because people like Sarah and Detective Warren and all of you were paying attention, were asking questions, were refusing to look away when something didn't feel right. That's what saves lives. Not suspicion or paranoia, but caring enough to notice when someone needs help." The crowd applauded. After the ceremony, Emily pulled me aside. "Dad," she said, "I found something when I was going through Mom's things." She handed me an envelope. It was addressed to me in Helen's handwriting. I opened it, with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, dated 2 weeks before her death. "My dearest Robert," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm so sorry. I need you to know something about Marcus. I've suspected for years that something was wrong with him. The way he looks at people, the way he manipulates situations. I've caught him in small cruelties, small lies. I never said anything because he's my son, and I wanted to believe I was wrong. But I'm not wrong. Please, Robert, be careful around him. Don't trust him with your health, your money, or your life. Watch your back. I love you. Always. Helen, she'd known. In her final days, fighting what she thought was cancer, she'd been trying to warn me. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched the letter. Emily hugged me tight. She tried to protect you. Even at the end, Emily whispered. That's who she was. That night, I sat in my living room. Helen's letter in my lap. I thought about everything that had happened. The poisoning, the investigation, the trial, the rebuilding. It had been the darkest period of my life, but it had also shown me who I really was. Not a victim. Not a helpless old man waiting to die. A fighter. A survivor. A father who refused to let evil win. Morrison's Pharmacy is still open today. I go in 3 days a week, filling prescriptions, chatting with customers, teaching medication safety classes. Sarah runs the day-to-day operations. She's brilliant at it. Emily stops by every Sunday before our dinner. Sometimes, she brings her new boyfriend, a kind architect who treats her with respect and makes her laugh. I've learned that legacy isn't about buildings or bank accounts. It's about the lives you touch, the people you help, the evil you refuse to let triumph. Marcus took so much from me. My wife, years of my health, my sense of safety, but he didn't take my spirit. He didn't take my purpose. And most importantly, he didn't take my family. Emily and I are closer now than we've been in decades. Last week, I got a letter from Marcus. He writes to me sometimes from prison. This one said he was sorry, that he'd been sick, that he hoped I could forgive him someday. I read it once, and then filed it away with the others, unanswered. Forgiveness isn't something I owe him, and apologies from someone who feels nothing are just more manipulation. Some people can't be saved or redeemed. They can only be stopped. That's what I did. And in doing so, I saved myself. If my story has moved you, please subscribe to our channel and share it. You never know who might need to hear that it's never too late to fight back, to protect yourself, to reclaim your life from those who would take it. And if you suspect someone you love is being abused, financially or otherwise, don't stay silent. Ask questions. Pay attention. Be the person who notices. You might save a life. Stay safe out there. And remember that family is defined not by blood, but by love, loyalty, and the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard.